Miami wanted Giannis, but forgot the one rule. Miami thought they were getting a superstar. They thought they were getting a two-time MVP, a champion, a walking mismatch, a man who could change the entire Eastern Conference overnight. But what they may have forgotten is this. With Giannis Antetokounmpo, you do not just get the basketball player, you get the family, the loyalty, the history, the pain, the sacrifice, and the people who were standing beside him before the world ever learned how to pronounce his name. And that is where this story gets dangerous, because reports around the league are saying Giannis is not exactly thrilled with the way Miami is handling his brothers. The Heat want Giannis. Of course they do. Every franchise on earth would want Giannis. But apparently, Miami does not want the full Antetokounmpo package. Not Thanasis, not Kostas, not Alex, just Giannis. And if you know anything about this man, you already know why that could become a serious problem. This is not some ordinary NBA drama. This is not just about bench spots, contracts, or who gets the last seat on the roster. This goes deeper than basketball. This goes all the way back to Athens, to poverty, to immigrant struggle, to brothers sharing dreams before any money, fame, MVP trophies, championship rings, or Nike shoes existed. Giannis has never moved like a normal superstar. He does not see success as something he carries alone. He sees it as something his whole family survived for. That is why he helped bring his brothers into NBA circles. That is why he protected them. That is why he once walked away from massive Adidas money when his family was not included. That was not business. That was a message, family first. Always. So now Miami has a problem. Because if the Heat really believe they can separate Giannis, the player, from Giannis, the brother, they may be making the kind of mistake that does not show up on a stat sheet until it is too late. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments. If you think Miami made a mistake, press 1. If you think Giannis should focus only on basketball, press 2 and subscribe, because this story is about to get much deeper. The family behind the freak. Before Giannis became the Greek freak, before the MVP chants, before the championship parade, before the shoe deals and the global fame, he was just a kid in Athens trying to help his family survive. That is the part people forget. They see the dunks. They see the blocks. They see the long strides from half court to the rim, but they do not always see the boy who grew up with uncertainty around him. The boy who understood struggle before he ever understood stardom. Giannis did not come from comfort. He came from sacrifice. He came from a family where everyone had to carry part of the weight. His brothers were not background characters in his story. They were there from the beginning. They knew what it felt like to have almost nothing. They knew what it felt like to chase a dream when the world was not even sure they belonged. They shared pressure, fear, hope, and hunger long before basketball became a business. That is why Giannis views family differently than most superstars. For some players, family is support. For Giannis, family is identity. Thanasis, Kostas, Alex, they are not just names attached to his last name. They are pieces of the road that built him. They remind him of who he was before the NBA turned him into a global brand. And that mattered. Because when a player becomes as powerful as Giannis, every organization wants the talent. They want the points, the rebounds, the defense, the playoff dominance. But not every organization wants to understand the person. And with Giannis, that is where teams can make a dangerous mistake. You cannot separate the superstar from the story. The reason he plays with so much force is not just athleticism. It is memory, it is gratitude, it is loyalty, it is the feeling that every time he steps on the floor, he is carrying more than himself. So when Miami looks at the situation and says, we only need Giannis, they may be missing the foundation that made Giannis great in the first place, because the Greek freak was never built alone. Why his brothers matter more than stats? The easy thing to do is look at the number. Thanasis is not a star. Kostas is not a star. Alex is still trying to find his place. Nobody is pretending these guys are all NBA players. Nobody is saying they change a playoff series with 20 points off the bench. And that is exactly why this story becomes so complicated. Because on paper, Miami can make the argument, roster spots matter, cap space matters, development matters. Every NBA team is trying to maximize every inch of the bench. If a player is not helping you win on the court, a front office will eventually ask the hard question, why is he here? That is the basketball side, but Giannis has never treated this like just basketball. Thanasis has always been energy. He brings fire. He brings defense. He brings the kind of presence that does not always show up in a box score. To outsiders, he may look like a bench player. To Giannis, he is a reminder of home, struggle, and loyalty. He is the brother who understands the journey without needing an explanation. Kostas has already tasted a championship environment. He has length, athleticism, and experience around winning teams. Alex represents the future of the family name. Still developing, still fighting, still trying to prove he belongs. But their true value to Giannis is emotional. And in the NBA, emotions matter more than teams like to admit. Confidence matters. Comfort matters. Trust matters. A superstar's state of mind can change the entire direction of a season. When Giannis feels grounded, supported, and respected, he becomes one of the most unstoppable forces in basketball. But when he feels misunderstood, that is where things can turn. Miami may believe they are protecting roster flexibility. They may believe they are making a smart basketball decision. But the real question is this: what is the cost of making Giannis feel like the most important part of his life is being treated like an inconvenience? Because sometimes the smallest roster decision can create the biggest emotional crack. Milwaukee understood the code. The Milwaukee Bucks did not keep Giannis simply because they paid him. They kept him because they understood him. That is the part Miami may need to study carefully. Milwaukee knew Giannis was different. They knew he was not the type of superstar who only cared about bright lights, massive markets, and personal branding. They knew his loyalty was tied to something deeper. If Milwaukee could become home for Giannis, then Giannis could give that city everything he had. So the Bucks made room. They made room for Thanasis. They made room for the Antetokounmpo presence. They understood that keeping Giannis comfortable was not weakness. It was strategy. It was culture. It was a smart organization realizing that their franchise player did not operate like everybody else. And look what happened. Giannis stayed. He grew. He trusted the organization. He fought through criticism. He dealt with playoff failures. He heard the noise that said he could not win without leaving. He watched other stars team up in bigger markets, but he stayed in Milwaukee and delivered something that changed the franchise forever: a championship. That title was not just about basketball talent. It was about belief. It was about a superstar who felt connected enough to keep pushing even when the easy answer was to run somewhere else. Milwaukee gave him more than a contract. They gave him a place where his family was part of the journey. That is why this Miami situation feels so risky. The Heat are known for discipline. They are known for culture. They are known for holding players to a standard. But culture is not just about toughness. Culture is also about understanding what makes your best player give you his whole heart. And Giannis's heart has always been tied to family. If Miami wants the same version of Giannis that Milwaukee had, they cannot ignore the code that Milwaukee respected. They cannot act surprised when loyalty becomes part of the negotiation. They cannot want the monster on the court while rejecting the values that created him. Because Milwaukee did not just manage Giannis, they understood the man behind the superstar, the Adidas decision that revealed everything. The Adidas story may be the clearest window into who Giannis really is. At a time when most athletes would have been focused on the biggest number, the biggest brand, and the fastest path to generational wealth, Giannis did something almost unbelievable. He looked at a massive opportunity and asked a different question. What about my brother? That one question tells you everything. For most players, a sneaker deal is a life-changing moment. It is not just money, it is status. It is validation. It is proof that the world sees you as more than an athlete. It means commercials, signature shoes, global campaigns, and a chance to become a brand beyond the game. But Giannis was not willing to become that brand alone. When Adidas reportedly did not include his brothers the way he wanted, Giannis walked away. Not because he did not understand the money, not because he did not know what was on the table. He knew exactly what he was turning down. That is what makes it powerful. He was not confused. He was committed. And that is the part Miami needs to understand. Giannis has already shown the world that there are things he values more than money, fame, and business convenience. His family is not a detail to him. It is not a bonus. It is not something he brings up only when negotiations get difficult. It is the center of his world. Nike understood that. They did not just sign Giannis the athlete, they embraced Giannis, the family man, the brother, the son, the loyal superstar who wanted his success to lift everyone who came from the same struggle. That understanding helped build one of the most recognizable player brands in basketball. So now ask yourself this. If Giannis could walk away from Adidas money because his family was not respected, why would anyone believe he would quietly ignore Miami doing the same thing? That is why this situation has real tension. Because the past already gave us the answer. Giannis has told the world who he is. The only question is whether Miami was listening. Miami's big gamble. On the surface, Miami looks like a perfect destination. The Heat have history. They have discipline. They have Pat Riley. They have a reputation for turning pressure into identity. They do not run from big personalities, big expectations, or big moments. If any franchise believes it can absorb a superstar and make the whole thing work, it is Miami, and adding Giannis would be massive. This is the kind of move that changes a conference overnight. A player like Giannis does not just improve your roster. He changes your ceiling. He makes opponents rethink matchups. He puts fear into defensive game plans. He gives you a player who can dominate without needing everything to be perfect. But the problem is not the basketball fit. The problem is the emotional fit. Miami may be looking at Giannis through the lens of competition. They may be saying, we have the culture, we have the system, we have the winning mindset. He will adjust, and maybe he will. Giannis is professional. He is tough. He is not the type of player who folds because things become uncomfortable. But comfort and weakness are not the same thing. Even the strongest players need trust. Even the toughest competitors need to feel understood. And if Miami starts this relationship by making Giannis feel like his family values are secondary, then they are planting a question in his mind before the first real chapter even begins. Do they actually know me? That is the dangerous question. Because once a superstar starts asking that, everything becomes heavier. Every meeting feels different. Every roster move gets analyzed. Every quiet moment turns into speculation. And in a league where stars have more power than ever, emotional disconnect can become organizational chaos fast. Miami is betting that Giannis wants to win badly enough to accept the situation. They are betting that their culture can replace the support system he had in Milwaukee. They are betting that basketball ambition will outweigh family loyalty. That is a bold bet. But with Giannis, bold can become reckless, because this is not just about bringing in a great player. It is about making sure the great player still feels whole once he arrives. The crack nobody wants to talk about. The scariest problems in the NBA are not always loud at first. Sometimes they start quietly. A player says the right things at the press conference. He smiles in the photos. He talks about winning, sacrifice, and being excited for a new chapter. The front office says the relationship is strong. The coach says everyone is aligned. Fans convince themselves everything is fine because the highlights still look good. But behind the scenes, a crack can already be forming. That is what Miami has to avoid with Giannis. Because if he walks into that locker room and feels like something important is missing, that feeling does not disappear just because the season starts. It follows him. It shows up during long road trips. It shows up after tough losses. It shows up when the media pressure rises and the city expects him to save everything. In Milwaukee, he had familiarity. He had routine. He had family energy around him. He had people who understood his language, his humor, his past, and his emotional rhythm. That kind of support may not score points, but it helps a player carry the pressure of being great. Miami may not see that immediately. They may only see the roster math. They may say, we cannot use spots this way. And from a pure basketball perspective, that is understandable. But with Giannis, pure basketball has never been the full conversation. This is a relationship business. And right now, the Heat risk sending a message that sounds cold. We value what you do, but not what you value. That is the type of message a superstar never forgets. Giannis might not explode publicly. He might not create drama online. He might not disrespect the organization. That is not who he is. But disappointment does not have to be loud to be real. It can sit beneath the surface and slowly change the way a player feels about a team. That is why this mattered. Miami does not need to hand out favors blindly, but they do need to show Giannis they understand the full picture. Because once trust gets damaged, even winning becomes harder. And for a team chasing a championship, that is a dangerous game to play. What happens if Giannis feels alone? Imagine being Giannis for a second. You leave the only NBA home you have ever truly known. You leave the city where you became a superstar, where you won MVPs, where you brought a championship, where fans watched you grow from a skinny unknown prospect into one of the most feared players in the world. Then you arrive in Miami, new building, new teammates, new expectations, new media pressure, new system, new city, new voices, telling you how things work now. And the people who help keep you grounded are not there. That mattered. Not because Giannis cannot function without his brothers. He can. This is one of the mentally strongest athletes in the sport. He has carried pressure before. He has faced doubt before. He has played through pain, criticism, and expectation. Nobody should mistake his loyalty for weakness. But strength does not mean isolation is easy. Every superstar has an anchor. For some players, it is a coach. For some, it is a childhood friend. For some, it is a routine, a city, a private circle that keeps the noise from swallowing them. For Giannis, that anchor has always been family. Take that away, and Miami may still get an elite player. But will they get the same fearless, joyful, fully connected Giannis who destroyed defenses and lifted Milwaukee through chaos? That is the question. Because the NBA is a league of tiny margins. The difference between a good season and a championship season can be one possession, one injury, one emotional fracture, one moment where the team either comes together or breaks apart. If Giannis is even 5% less comfortable, 5% less connected, 5% less himself, that can matter in May and June. Miami cannot afford a half-connected superstar. They need the full Giannis, the downhill force, the defensive monster, the locker room presence, the leader who believes the mission is bigger than himself. But belief has to be earned, and if Miami wants Giannis to fully buy in, they must prove they are not just using his talent. They must prove they respect the story that made him great. Because the worst thing a franchise can do is win the trade and lose the trust. The 3 possible endings. There are 3 ways this story can go, and none of them are simple. The first ending is Miami adjusts before the damage becomes real. The Heat look at the situation and realize this is bigger than a roster spot. They understand that with Giannis, family is not a side issue. It is part of the entire engine. So maybe they offer Thanasis a training camp invite. Maybe they create a player development role. Maybe they find a way to keep the Antetokounmpo family close without completely changing their roster plan. The move itself does not have to be dramatic. The message does. We hear you. We understand you. We respect what matters to you. That would be the smartest ending because it protects the relationship before tension becomes public. Miami does not have to surrender its standards, but it does have to show emotional intelligence. A franchise can be tough and still be human. A front office can protect roster flexibility and still make its superstar feel seen. That balance is what great organizations figure out before the cameras catch the problem. The second ending is Giannis adapts, he accepts the situation, locks in, and says, "Fine, I will make this work." He plays at an MVP level, Miami starts winning, the highlights take over the conversation. Fans forget the drama because winning has a way of covering almost everything in the NBA. For a while, the Heat may look like they made the right call, but even that ending has risk. Because winning can cover tension, but it does not always heal it. If Giannis feels misunderstood underneath the success, the issue can return the moment adversity hits. One losing streak, one playoff disappointment, one uncomfortable meeting. One quote taken out of context. Suddenly, the same story comes back louder than before. The third ending is the most dangerous one. Quiet distance. Nobody explodes. Nobody demands anything publicly. Nobody creates a scene. Giannis says the right things. Miami says the right things. The team stays professional. But inside, something feels different. Giannis begins to wonder if this organization truly understands who he is beyond the jersey. The Heat begin to wonder why their superstar does not feel fully settled. And fans begin to notice little things that may or may not mean anything. A quiet walk to the bench becomes a clip. A serious face after a loss becomes a theory. A short answer in a press conference becomes a headline. That is how NBA drama grows. It does not always begin with shouting. Sometimes it begins with silence. And once the league smells uncertainty, everyone starts watching. Rival teams monitor the situation. Reporters ask sharper questions. Fans read body language. Every rumor gains weight because the foundation already feels unstable. That is why Miami cannot let this drift. They made the massive move to get Giannis. Now they need the smaller, smarter moves to keep him fully connected. Because superstar management is not just about contracts, schemes, and minutes. It is about trust. And with Giannis, the path to trust has always been clear. Family, the lesson Miami cannot ignore. The lesson here is bigger than Giannis. It is bigger than Miami. It is bigger than one roster decision. The lesson is that NBA teams cannot treat superstars like machines. You cannot just plug in greatness and expect everything to work. Players are human beings. They carry memories, values, fears, loyalties, and emotional foundations that shape how they perform. The best organizations understand that. The weakest ones ignore it until the damage is already done. Giannis Antetokounmpo has spent his entire career telling the world who he is. He is loyal, he is family-driven, he is built by sacrifice, he is not the kind of superstar who sees success as a solo mission. His brothers are not just relatives standing near the spotlight. They are part of the reason he survived the road to the spotlight in the first place. That does not mean Miami has to give away roster spots without thought. A serious franchise must protect standards. Winning matters. Fit matters. Every decision has consequences, but respect also matters. Communication matters. Understanding matters. And when your franchise player has a value system this clear, ignoring it is not discipline. It is risk. Strategically, Miami has to solve this before it becomes a season-long shadow. They need honest conversations with Giannis. They need to explain their basketball vision while also showing they respect his family bond. They need to find a bridge between Heat culture and Giannis culture. Because if they do, this could still become powerful. A fully locked-in Giannis in Miami could terrify the league. His force, Miami's discipline, and a team built around championship pressure could become one of the most dangerous stories in basketball. But if they get it wrong, this could become the quiet mistake that follows them all year. One uncomfortable silence can become one locker room question. One locker room question can become one media rumor. One media rumor can become a national debate. And once a superstar starts feeling like the organization does not truly understand him, every problem becomes heavier than it should be. That is why leadership matters. Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, and the Heat front office do not need to panic. They do not need to abandon their identity, but they do need to listen. Great leadership is not just forcing players into a system. Great leadership is knowing when the system must make room for the human being inside the jersey. The human lesson is simple. Never forget the people who helped someone become great. Do not mock loyalty. Do not dismiss family. Do not assume success means a person no longer needs the roots that kept them strong. In life, in basketball, and in leadership, respect is not weakness. It is wisdom. Giannis can still make this work. Miami can still make this work. But both sides have to meet each other with honesty. Giannis may need to understand that every franchise has limits, and Miami may need to understand that some emotional foundations are not optional. The best outcome is not control. It is trust. The best outcome is not one side winning the argument. It is both sides protecting the mission. Because championships are not built only with talent. They are built with sacrifice, chemistry, belief, and peace inside the locker room. If Miami wants the best version of Giannis, they must protect more than his body. They must protect his purpose. So now, I want to hear from you. Did Miami make a mistake by not embracing Giannis's brothers? Press 1 if you think the Heat need to fix this fast. Press 2 if you think Giannis should move forward without making family part of the roster conversation. Drop your city in the comments, hit like, share this with another NBA fan, and subscribe, because this story may only be getting started.